one of the past tenses in French is not used at all. And then we have the judgments published in all 24 official languages of the court. It is not an easy task for the translated, the so-called jurists, linguists, who are lawyers with a deep knowledge of their mother tongue and the French language, who execute this duty. But it is difficult, and it is sometimes impossible to find the same message in wording as it is meant in the original French language. I have several experiences as to this problem. I wrote some, let's say, important for me judgments in French. I put all my efforts in the idea I wanted to express, and afterwards, when I read the Slovenian text, I couldn't find the same message to be given to the public. Not because the translation was bad, but because it's not possible to extend all the details from one language into the other. And I can't not mention the problem we have with the English language. English is also post-Brexit a common language, as we can see it today, for the European legal community. But all our judgments are translated into English. They are not created in English. We hardly ever speak English at the court. I only speak English at conferences. At the court, I speak more Slovenian than English. So the translation into English is sometimes not very precise, because the legal terminology is different. As everybody knows, common law is something different. By the way, we'll miss the impact of the common law after Brexit, because it was nice to get new ideas, a little bit strange for us, the European civil law lawyers. But nevertheless, the discrepancy between the two approaches is to be seen in our judgment. Then, not to forget, there are no separate opinions. It's an eternal discussion. Why not? Is it good or not? But that's it. There are arguments pro and contra. We could organize the next conference on this, perhaps. What does this mean? That the judgment, which is created, the draft text, is written by the judge rapporteur, by his cabinet, judge and his legal secretaries, his collaborators. He presents a draft, and then the chamber, the grand chamber of 15 judges, the chamber of 5 or 3 judges meet, and they discuss it. We find, firstly, the final result. The majority decides. Sincerely, we hardly ever vote. It can happen, but it's not very usual. Normally, we agree more or less at the result, or we find the arguments of the majority persuasive. But afterwards, the minority tries to relativize the final result with insertion, or more often omission, of certain arguments put down by the judge rapporteur. That's why the logic of that a judgment is not always to be seen. It's not good. I would prefer, I like, for example, judgments of German courts. They are very long, very detailed, with references to doctrine, to literature, everything, to former case law. We do not do it. And for the moment, it can't be changed. Sometimes we really regret it. So the final result, a judgment, is very often a dry one. Sometimes you can't really find all the steps of logic in it. A good help is to compare the judgment with the opinion of Advocate General, because Advocate General is one single person who writes his opinion and he's not influenced by others. The judgment is always made by a committee, by collegium. And I can't help not repeating. I suppose I already quoted this idea in this room in Maribor, that an idea written by the Canadian professor William Tetley in one of his articles in the, I suppose, Lloyd's Maritime and Comparative Law Quarterly, some 30 years ago or 40, that he poses to the reader a question. Have you ever read a good poem written by a committee? The question is rhetorical, and we could apply it also for a judgment. When quod capita tot sententia, a lot of judges, everybody has his own opinion. We are not very young at the court, as you can see. I'm one of the oldest, but there are not a lot of youngsters there. So we bring with us our tradition, our careers, and the judgment is a final compromise. As for the sausage, you must take it as it is, but it's quite well to know why is it like this, because obviously there was a misunderstanding, there were compromises, and the final result is not as good as it could be if perhaps one person had written it. And now, allow me, Mr. Dean, concerning the topic of this conference, nevertheless, to try to underline or to express, to illustrate this general introduction by quoting two judgments of our courts concerning international cooperation in civil matters. There are numerous, and we could spend, as I said, a lot of time on this, but I'm just trying to show you the method of interpretation of the civil cooperation instruments, and I limit myself to the Brussels 1A Convention. I try to present you two cases where the method of interpretation of our court is well seen. These are small cases, not really big ones. The Americans say that hard cases make bad law. You can inverse it and say small cases make good law. It happens very often. By the way, some famous judgments, some famous principles of the EU law as created by our court were taken in really trivial cases. One-handed loss, Simmental, Costa and Tenel. Everybody knows these judgments from the 60s or 70s, the facts